in. Alfred McCormack, Director of Military Intelligence of the Pacific Theatre of War, who was probably in as good a position as anyone for judging the situation, believed that the Japanese surrender could have been obtained in a few weeks by a blockade alone. Okay, because they were cutting off their supplies. Okay, putting them on a siege basically. The Japanese had no longer enough food in stock. Their fuel reserves were practically exhausted. We had begun a secret process of mining all their harbours, which was steadily isolating them from the rest of the world. It was like sanctions, man. That's what they're trying to do, just trying to starve and kill people, man. If we had brought this project to its logical conclusion, the destruction of Japan's cities with incendiary and other bombs would have been quite unnecessary. General Curtis Lee May, the tough cigar-smoking Army Force Hawk, stated publicly shortly after nuclear bombs were dropped on Japan, the war would have been over in 2 weeks. The atomic bomb had nothing to do with the end of the war at all. Vice Chairman of the US Bombing Survey, Paul Nitz, concluded that even without the atomic bomb, Japan was likely to surrender in a matter of months. My own view was that Japan would capitulate by November 1945. Even without the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it seemed highly unlikely, given we had found what we found to have been the mood of the Japanese government, that a US invasion of the islands scheduled for November 1st, 1945 would have been necessary. Deputy Director of the Office of Naval Intelligence Ellis Zacharias wrote, "Just when the Japanese were ready to capitulate, we went ahead and introduced to the world the most devastating weapon it had ever seen. In effect, gave the go-ahead to Russia to swarm over Eastern Asia." Okay, it prompted Russia, man. Okay, because Russia was taken back by what the fuck you did, man. You know, you started the Cold War, man. Okay, Washington decided that Japan had been given its chance, and now it was time to use the A-bomb. I submit that it was the wrong decision. It was wrong on strategic grounds, and it was wrong on humanitarian grounds. Okay, so you got fucking poor humanitarian fucking portfolio, man. Okay, and yet you dictate to everybody what they should and should not be doing. It's fucking ridiculous, man. Okay, America needs to be destroyed. It will be destroyed, but it needs to be destroyed, man. Okay, for all this fucking hypocrisy and wickedness that it's been spreading, man. Okay. Let's see what else is down there. Brigadier General Carter Clark, the military intelligence officer in charge of preparing summaries of intercepted Japanese cables for President Truman and his advisors, said, "We didn't need to do it, and we knew we didn't need to do it, and they knew that we knew we didn't need to do it. We used them as an experiment for 2 atomic bombs." Many other higher military officers concurred. The Commander-in-Chief of the US Fleet and Chief of Naval Operations, Ernest J. King, stated that the naval blockade and prior bombing of Japan in March 1945 had rendered the Japanese helpless, and that the use of the atomic bomb was both unnecessary and immoral. Also, the opinion of Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz was reported to have said in a press conference on September 22nd, 1945, that the Admiral took the opportunity of adding his voice to those insisting that Japan had been defeated before the atomic bombing and Russia's entry into the war. In a subsequent speech at the Washington Monument on October 5th, 1945, Admiral Nimitz stated the Japanese had in fact already sued for peace before the atomic age was announced to the world. With the destruction of Hiroshima and before the Russian entry into the war, it was learned also that on or about July 20th, 1945, General Eisenhower had urged Truman in a personal visit not to use the atomic bomb. Eisenhower's assessment was it wasn't necessary to hit them with that awful thing, to use the atomic bomb to kill, terrorize civilians. Okay? The white man doesn't care about no fucking people, man. He doesn't care about the people in Libya. He doesn't care about the people in Syria. He don't care about the people in Africa. He don't care about none of them. Okay? All he's interested in is his own personal goals, man. Okay? And nothing has changed. It's the same agenda. Okay, he acts like he cares, but he does not fucking care. The guy is the nation, the people, the white man's a damn fucking serpent, man. Okay? without even attempting negotiation was a double crime. Eisenhower also stated that it wasn't necessary for Truman to succumb to the tiny handful of people putting pressure on the president to drop atomic bombs on Japan. And, you know, I'm going to take one guess who that small handful of people was, man. No, and it had to be fucking Amalekites, man, and fucking so-called Jews, man. You know, because, you know, who's the biggest lobbyist in America today? They're fucking so-called Jews, man. Okay, them gutter rats, okay? So, they sway a lot of decisions that are made in America, man. And, you know, it wouldn't surprise you it's the same then, man, okay? British officers were of the same mind. For example, General Sir Hastings Ismay, Chief of Staff to the British Minister of Defence, said to Prime Minister Churchill that when Russia came into the war against Japan, the Japanese would probably wish to get out on almost any terms short of the dethronement of the Emperor. Okay, they weren't ready to take on that battle, man. On hearing that the atomic test was successful, Ismay's private reaction was one of revulsion. Okay. It says, why were bombs dropped on populated cities without military value? But like I said, they hit civilians and not military compounds, man. They hit cities and shit. Okay. Even military officers who favoured use of nuclear weapons mainly favoured using them on unpopulated areas of Japanese areas or military targets, not cities. For example, a special assistant of the Secretary of the Navy, Louis Strauss, proposed to Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal that a non-lethal demonstration of atomic weapons would be enough to convince the Japanese to surrender. The Naval Secretary agreed. I proposed to Secretary Forrestal that the weapon should be demonstrated before it was used. Primarily, it was because it was clear to a number of people, myself among them, that the war was nearly over. The Japanese were nearly ready to capitulate. My proposal to the Secretary was that the weapon should be demonstrated over some area accessible to Japanese observers and where its effects would be dramatic. I remember suggesting that a satisfactory place for such demonstration would be a large forest of cryptomeria trees not far from Tokyo. The cryptomeria trees is the Japanese version of the Abara redwood. I anticipated that a bomb detonated at a suitable height above such forests would lay the trees out in windrows from the center of the explosion in all directions as though they were matchsticks, and of course set them afire in the center. It seemed to me that the demonstration of this sort would prove to the Japanese that we could destroy any of their cities at will. Secretary Forrestal agreed wholeheartedly with the recommendation. Okay, so they were going to scare them with it, basically. Then guys wanted to scare them with it. Okay, but we all know what happened. Okay, that wasn't what went down. It seemed to me that such a weapon was not necessary to bring the war to a successful conclusion. That once used, it would find its way into the armaments of the world. Okay, everyone else would want to get them, man. Okay, that's all you do, man. When someone sees the power or technology that you have, man, they want that technology and better. Okay. When someone's enemies is strengthened, man, they're gonna strengthen themselves. Okay, that's natural. Okay. General George Marshall agreed. Contemporary documents show that Marshall felt these weapons might first be used against straight military objectives such as large naval installations, and then if no complete result was derived from the effect of that, he thought we ought to designate a large number of manufacturing areas from which the people would be warned to leave, telling the Japanese that we intend to destroy such centers. As the document concerning Marshall's view suggests, the question of whether the use of an atomic bomb was justified turns on whether the bombs had to be used against a largely civilian target rather than strictly a military target, which in fact was the explicit choice, since although there were Japanese troops in the cities, neither Hiroshima nor Nagasaki was deemed military vital by US planners. This is one of the reasons neither had been heavily bombed up to this point in the war. Moreover, targeting at Hiroshima and Nagasaki was aimed explicitly on non-military facilities surrounded by workers' homes. That is purposely aimed at civilians, man. Okay, white man's committed many humanitarian crimes, man. Crimes against humanity. He's committed many of them. Okay, and he should be persecuted, man. He should be in the fucking Hague, and you know, America should just die, man. Okay. Historians agree that the bomb wasn't needed. Historians agree that nuclear bombs did not need to be used to stop the war or save lives. As historian Doug Long notes, U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission historian J. Samuel Walker has studied the history and research on the decision to use nuclear weapons on Japan. In his conclusion, he writes, the consensus among scholars is that the bomb was not needed to avoid an invasion of Japan and to end the war in a relatively short time. It is clear that the alternatives to the bomb existed and that Truman and his advisors knew it. Okay? It says politicians agreed. Many high-level politicians agreed. For example, Herbert Hoover, the Japanese were prepared to negotiate all the way from February 1945 up to and before the time the atomic bombs were dropped. If such leads had been followed up, there would have been no occasion to drop the atomic bombs. In the light of available evidence, I myself and others felt that if such a categorical statement about the retention of the dynasty had been issued in May 1945, the surrender-minded elements in the Japanese government might well have been afforded by such a statement a valid reason and the necessary strength to come to an early clear-cut decision. If surrender could have been brought about in May 1945 or even in June or July before the entrance of the Soviet Russia into the Pacific War and the use of atomic bombs, the world would have been the gainer. Okay? Alright, let's see if we got these pictures up in there. Alright, we're gonna get Nahum chapter 3 verse 1. Okay, it says here, woe to the bloody city, it is full of lies and robbery, and the prey departeth not. Okay, America is that bloody city, man. Okay, it's full of lies and robbery. That's how the so-called white people got America, man. Through robbery and blood and lies. Okay, America, the so-called white man, is the king of lies. Okay. The noise of a whip and the noise of the rattling of the wheels and the prancing horses and the jumping chariots. The horseman lifted up both the bright sword and the glittering spear. There is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses. Okay, the glittering spear is that nuclear weapon, man. Okay, there is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses. There is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses. Because of the multitude of whoredoms of the well-favoured harlot, which is America, the mistress of witchcrafts that serve nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcrafts. Okay, because America is nothing but was founded on witchcraft, man, and nothing but wickedness goes on there. Okay, and whoredoms. Okay, behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will discover thy skirts upon thy face. I will shew the nations thy nakedness and the kingdoms thy shame. Okay, and I will cast abominable filth upon thee and make thee vile and will set thee as a gazing stock. Okay, so we're seeing that, you know, America is nothing but a fucking hypocritical nation, man, full of wickedness, blood, okay, lies. Okay, that's why you can't be nothing that comes out of a fucking America, man. None of these politicians, where anything in the so-called white man's kingdom, man, you can't believe, man. Okay, you have to search it out for yourself, man. Okay, 'cause these people are nothing but demons, man. Okay, bloodthirsty pirates. Okay. Right. This is Isaiah chapter 14, verse 6. It says, he who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted and none hindereth. Okay, the so-called white man has done nothing but rule the nations in anger, man. Okay. There's no need for his wrath and his anger. Okay. Except for that was his blessing, man. Okay. He's an angry child, man. Esau is an angry child, man. Okay, because he didn't get the blessing that Jacob got. Okay, he's an angry little fucking child, man. Okay, and now he just rules in wrath, man. Okay, like I said, like, you know,